Hello and welcome to Still Here, Still Trying. My name's Mike Baker. I'm your host. And look, before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. This show is about real life, creativity, leadership, family, and the quiet work of staying human when things don't go according to plan. If this episode connects with you, help it travel. Please follow the podcast, share it with someone who might need it, leave a review if you have the time. That support is what keeps these going. Quick note, Mira has the week off. She'll be back again soon. Today's just me, a good friend, and a real conversation. And that brings me to today's guest. I am so excited to welcome Chad Anderson. Chad lives in Salt Lake City with his husband and their two teenage kids. Chad is a licensed clinical social worker, a writer, a filmmaker, and someone who has spent a lot of his life doing the work most people avoid. Chad hosts the weekly podcast, Gray Malkin Lane. He's the author of Gay Mormon Dad, which is coming out soon as a graphic novel. He also produced the film Dog Valley. And listen, you need to go check it out. I'm going to leave the link in the show notes. Just add that to your watch list. It's powerful. Chad is the owner and sole therapist at Healthy Conflict Counseling, where he works with people navigating conflict, identity, and the conversations that matter most. I have known Chad for a very long time. I met him when I moved to Coeur d'Alene to work up here. Chad is thoughtful. He's honest. He doesn't rush the work, and he understands what it takes to stay when life asks you to change. All right. Well, I'm so excited for this episode. Let's just get right into it. Everybody enjoy, and we'll see you on the other side. All right, everybody. Well, I'm so excited to have Chad here with us today. We talked about in the intro all of the amazing things that Chad has been up to. My podcast, for those of you that know, it's all about just making connections and just living the human stories and hearing about that. So, I've known Chad for a very long time. I met Chad when I moved up to North Idaho for the job. Chad worked with us for a little bit, and then life took him down to Utah. And we were just talking before the show. It's been like 10, 12, 15 years since we've actually spoken since then, but the power of social media, it's sort of keeping up with life. So thanks for being here, Chad. It's really an honor to have you on the show.
What a joy to see your face. Thank you for having me.
It's going to be a great conversation. Well, let's jump into it here, Chad. Like I say, it's been a while since we've talked, but you have lived quite the life. Like watching the outside, from the outside, live quite the life, have lots of stories. What's one part of the story that people usually miss? I think we have all of the external things that we see from outside, but what's part of your story that people usually miss?
I don't know how to answer that because it depends on the circle or the space that I'm occupying, right? So when I'm in a different realms, people know a very different side of me. And it was like this even when I knew you, if I'm honest.
Yeah,
There was like
yeah,
it's always been like the person I am here versus the person I am there. Now the difference between life now and life then is I'm the same person everywhere I go. But when I'm at work versus when I'm parenting my kids versus when I'm writing or hosting or producing, those are all very different pieces of me. And I think different people know different parts of my story. So I'm a clinical social worker in private practice, self-employed. I write books, including comic books. I've made a documentary. I formed a band. I host a show. So like there's these little pieces of me that are all just kind of different parts of me that I love to just weave together. And it's nice to be a fully fledged person with lots of interests. I have a lot of creative energy. So that's the thing people say to me a lot is like, how do you do everything? And I'm like, it's the right amount for me to do. I feel very stuck when I'm not doing things that I love.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that part of it. I mean, I feel that same way, right? I mean, I don't know. Like for me, I think it's the ADHD side of it, but it's like this extra energy you can tap into of just like so many things going on all the time. I've done better at finishing projects over the last few years, which has been great. But I think it's really cool when you have many different spaces you can put your energy. And then I want to go back to the comment you made about you're you now, everywhere you go, versus, where you were before. I've talked on the show a lot about like the masks that we wear in different spaces, right? And it's pretty empowering when you take that mask off and you're able to actually just show up and be you. I think we still have filters, right? Like I'm the CEO, and I don't, swear every other comment at work, right? But I'm still me and I'm having fun, but we put filters on. Um, what's that done for you? Going from where, when I first met you to where you are now. I mean, man,
Yeah,
you've
I
done a
mean,
lot to become you.
in some ways incomparable and in some ways very, very comparable. I think you and I have
Hmm.
a lot of similarities and a lot of similar passions, and we connect for particular reasons. I grew up in a house that had a ton of trauma, back into early childhood and on, a lot of broken systems. And so part of my upbringing was the necessary requirement of secret keeping. There is the Mormon component where you're not allowed to ask any questions or be any different. And then there's the queerness component where I learned, even without being told, how to just hide in plain sight. So, when you and I knew each other and were working together, it was during my coming out process. And while a lot of people in my life were actively disowning me and casting me aside, you were one of the very few people at the time, and especially one of the very few Mormon people that was like very supportive and kind and loving all the way through that process. You didn't have a negative word to say, and it made an enormous difference in my life then and now. So, like, anytime you meet someone who has navigates the coming out process in these kind of conservative environments, those people who are amazing make a huge difference. So, me now, 15 years later, back then I was a divided up, kind of broken person. And now I'm a person who really likes myself and is like living on all cylinders. So it's a very different thing. I was also a writer and a social worker and a dad and all the things back then, but I didn't like myself. So to be the person I'm supposed to be, while doing the things that I love is very different than doing the things that I love to try to make myself smaller or to go
Love that.
away or to diminish. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but
No,
for
yeah, I
those that
love it.
grow up in trauma, you know what that's like, right?
Mhm.
Leaving that stuff behind and learning how to carry it with you is not an easy process, but it makes a world of difference.
Oh, I love the visual around, where you said making yourself smaller versus like, I'm here, I'm ready to take on the world. I mean, that transition, I mean, it's so powerful to just come be yourself. I love that phrase, just
Yeah, I
making
always I
yourself
always I've
smaller.
always described
It's
it as
it's
like
perfect. Yeah.
always described as like coming up for oxygen. Like when you
Mhm.
haven't been breathing and then suddenly you breathe, try not breathing again.
Yeah. No, I mean, God, thanks for sharing that. I love that visual, and, watching you go through, and thank you for your kind words. Like, isn't that what it's supposed to just be like? We're all just supposed to be human no matter what's happening. And I know that's hard for lots of people as you go through it, but we want to do that for everybody. And I mean, I think it's helped me navigate lots of things in my life, just seeing people go through all of their experiences. And, I've talked a lot on the show too. Like, every single person has their stuff they're dealing with, right? I mean, we're all broken in our own ways, but I love, the energy that you carry. It's fun seeing you, but just a word that keeps coming to my head is just that grounded. Like, I feel like you've grounded, and like you have that inner power of just like, I know who I am. I don't need to make myself small, which I love that. I'm going to
Yeah,
have to float back to that a lot.
and kind of the anyone who expects me to make myself small, it doesn't have a lot of room in my life. I,
Yeah.
I I came out later in life. I came out at the age of 32, which is an awful long time to wait to start your life. You know what I mean? And even since then, I've been raising little kids who are now teens. So there's even a sense now of kind of urgency of like, it's your time. You got to live your life. You only get to do this one time, and there's so much to make up for. And I think most queer people that I know have a similar experience, but for people who leave Mormonism or for people who navigate trauma, it's a similar experience in like, we only get to do life one time and look at all these years that I gave to something else.
Mhm. I love that. Oh, you're always so wise. Um, How about this? So what did choosing honesty cost you at first? I think there's a real story there, right? I mean, because I have a lot of people that listen to the show that are going through struggles, and I think those are the comments that come back is that, we're leaving them with some nuggets. So think of it from the lens of somebody that's struggling. Like you gotta make that choice to just choose honesty, but that does cost. That hurts. What did that?
Yeah, yeah. I work a lot with the queer community here in Utah as a therapist, and so this is when I'm doing public speaking. This is the anecdote that I'll often give. I'll often see people who feel stuck in their lives, who there's some sort of barrier in place. And I mean, we can define honesty and truth in a lot of different ways, right? But you and I grew up in a world that taught us to uh, push conformity and like public the three paths when you're trying to face a big decision like this. Path number one is always things mostly stay the same, but I change. Path number two is I change things. And path number three, excuse me, uh, path number two is like I'm no longer going to play by the same rules. I'm rocking the boat. I'm mixing things up, right? And path number three is I'm completely changing. I'm leaving something behind. I'm walking away from something. But the key with this approach is you got to figure out that at the end of all of these roads, you deserve to be happy. So whichever one you're picking, right? So the question I think you're asking is when I finally came out, coming out meant literally losing everything. And I had to reach a place in my life where the idea of staying closeted was much more threatening to me than the idea of coming out. So, I mean, I left a job that I really loved, working with you, that felt like a high point in my career. I owned a home. I was a well respected member in a community and in a family and in my ex wife's family. And I literally lost all of that. I was suddenly the kind of person that you don't let your kids play around, and people stop talking, and people stop coming over, and people stop checking in. And in some cases, people completely cut me out. So leaving behind painful systems was initially very challenging. But I think the fear of that kept me closeted for so long was much worse than the outcome. Because when you end up leaving something behind, and for those listening, if you have had that really awful job that you stayed in too long, or that really terrible relationship you held on to for too long, you know what it's like to finally end it. It's not easy, but you feel different afterward. And it's worth the work put in to feel different. Now, that's going to mean something different for everybody, right? Like, my challenge is to be, I'm going to be an ethical person. I'm going to be kind. I'm going to keep my boundaries, but I'm no longer playing in the sandbox of broken systems, if you will.
I love that when you choose to separate yourself from it and you're actually looking into the sandbox versus, you're in the sandbox throwing sand on everybody and stuff, right? I mean, you're able to step out, and I think that lens was really interesting for me, as you leave the church or anyone that's making a big change. I mean, that build up to the change, there's a lot of tension. Like you just feel it in here. It's like crushing your soul. You're just like it's heavy, heavy, heavy because you need to do something, but you can't. And then that deep breath that comes after, like even just right after the conversation, like I love your analogy again, just that deep breath, that coming up for oxygen. It's like, okay, that's done. Now what?
I
And
mean, I
now I'm
built
out of the sandbox and I can start putting my life together. It's
when I
great.
built a career working around trauma, PTSD, and I
Mhm.
have significant PTSD in a few different categories. And if you go study PTSD, there's a lot of words that show up when people are struggling. One of them is dissociating. So, like, I have to separate myself out from unpleasant reality, is like a way that we survive trauma. But when you're out of the trauma, but still re experiencing it by dissociating all the time, that's not a healthy way to live, right? Making yourself numb constantly, or having huge emotional reactions to things, which is called dysregulating. Or there's points in trauma, and this is something I have from time to time. When something really triggers, I feel like my brain leaves my body. There's a whole sensation of like I go into like a weird trauma autopilot, and like my whole system shifts into something else. Coming out was like a weird realization that I had been living in a trauma state for like many years. So choosing to speak truth and leave that behind is more than just navigating a brave path or honesty. It's leaving behind major systems of trauma. So I create a lot of rules for myself in my life these days. I'm not allowed to talk to myself in a way that I would not talk to my children. is a very simple rule that I live by because I used to be really mean to myself when I was closeted. I would have to say abusive things to keep myself small, which was reenacting things that took place in my own childhood. So there's I don't know, humans are kind of thinly layered at the end of it all, but it takes so much work to figure out who we are. And living life in this world, in this day and age, is not an easy thing.
No, there's so many expectations from everyone, on you. I mean, I feel that as a dad, as a leader, all those things. Like there's just this pressure to be this person. Um, that's part of life. Like part of it, you have to do that. Having that, the ability to ground yourself. Like I know who I am. I love my job. I love my family. I love my life right now.
This is Mike's 13th article of faith.
That's right. It's hard. Like I have days where I just want to bang my head against a wall and I'm frustrated and I'm sad. Like that's a normal part of life. When you add trauma and all the other things on top of it, I think that weight is magnified by 10, 100, pick a number, and it just makes it so hard to live life. And you just start on taking off layers every time you address one of those issues, and it's like losing weight. I mean, you start to feel better. You can walk, 2 extra blocks, you can walk 3 miles, you just start getting better as you unpack that. So I love that, Chad. So I want to move into the creativity stuff because I actually there's stuff I don't know yet. You talked about a band and all these other things. So why does creating something, um why does that help you? And how does that give you energy to move into a different space? I think a lot of people that have trauma and are doing things, taking a step, being creative, I think there's a sacred space in there somewhere. But tell me a little bit about the creative stuff you're doing and sort of how that helps you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's always been a big piece of me, right? So ever since I was a little kid, and I feel like I'm the same person now as I was when I was a little kid. The same interests at a different kind of level. I love people. I love the human story. I love art. I can watch a movie or a play or a singing performance and openly cry because I see someone enjoying themselves and like fulfilling themselves spiritually through the process. Like I'm not going to cry because the story's sad. I'm going to cry because I see the actor like living their truth. That's what brings tears to my eyes every time. So when I create room in my life to do things that feel right, it just makes an enormous difference. And my path takes me different places, but when I pick something, when I choose something, I'm all in 100%. Like I become the load bearer. There's this painting on my wall over to my right. I could pull it up and show you if you like. I went to this art fair once, and there's a picture of an ant carrying a giant typewriter on his back out of a burning city, basically. And I'm like, oh my God, I love that piece. And the artist was like, oh, you're a writer then. Like, only writers buy this piece because you feel the weight of the story as
You
the
got to tell
world
the
burns
story.
around you, right? So, I spent 5 years making a film called Dog Valley that I'm super proud of about a gay hate crime here in Utah that resulted in a death penalty conviction, which was a very, very serious topic to delve into. But I felt uniquely equipped as a trauma therapist to tell a story that people need to know about a man that needs to be remembered. And it opened some crazy doors. I spent 2 or 3 years working on it on my own, and then I went to 5 different film studios, and I'm like, I have no money, but I've got all the story and all the relationships built. Will you help me make a film? And a film company agreed. Like we spent 2 years traveling and
That's
and
so
making
cool.
a movie together that they were pledging their equipment to because the story was so powerful. Writing my memoir, which is coming out as a graphic novel this coming year. It's called Gay Mormon Dad. An opportunity to share truth and tell a version of human story where I'm celebrating my poetry and my journey, my children, the different parts of me that make me up. And this current year, for the last few years, I've been hosting a show. I used to work for Marvel Comics, which I do think you knew.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
Back when just before you and I met, I used to write for Marvel. So I have a show where I interview like comic professionals, and I'm doing like pop culture analysis about like American tropes and making diverse voices heard, and like a very strong academic lens. And the show has built me an enormous community of just beloved friends. And I'm likely to turn my research into a dissertation as I'm looking to go back to school for my doctorate. And then I sing. I've always been a singer, and this last couple of years, we put a little ensemble together. It's called Cerulean, and I get to sing folk music and practice with friends. My husband plays the piano, and we've got a guy on guitar and drums and another singer. And we don't do it all the time, but like I just feel so joyful every time, So balancing all that with two kids and a business is not always easy, but I feel fulfilled as long as I make the right amount of time for myself in all of that. Whereas when I'm not doing those things, I feel like I'm drying up on the inside. And in 2025, I feel like there is never, well, 2026 now, there's never been more need for joy in the world. The world wants me to be small, and I just refuse. I won't shrink away. But it's a scary place out there right now. So yeah, I just threw a lot at you at once.
I love it. Oh my gosh. I was just like, I wanted to go on, I want to explore each of those. Talk about the process of creating a movie. I mean, you talked a little about like, I think I have no money. I have this great idea. I love the piece in there. Like, I have this story that I need to tell. I feel that often in the stuff I'm doing. Like, I have this story, I have this concept that I want to get out, but I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And you kind of sounds like you went through that experience. Just take a couple minutes and just sort of walk through that process and tell people, where they can find the movie, and we'll put links to all of your
Yeah,
creative
yeah. So
adventures in the show notes. But
Dog Valley is named after, if you've driven through southern Utah, there's an exit with nothing there. It's called the Dog Valley exit. Next time you're driving towards St. George or Vegas, you could notice. That's where the murder took place. So it's a film that's based on real events in 1988, where there was a young man named Gordon Church who was killed in a really brutal gay hate crime that resulted in a death penalty conviction. I learned many years ago I really love researching and telling stories. And in this process, it started with me kind of learning a story, finding what I could. Then I drove to a random courthouse in central Utah and charged a high amount on my credit card to copy the entire contents of two full murder trials, and then went home with boxes of like thousands and thousands of pages that I then spent months going through intricately. And so at this point, it had to be something. And I was going to write a book, I thought. But then I started reaching out to some of the people. So Gordon, when he died, had a boyfriend and a couple of very close friends that he was out to in late 80s, Cedar City, Utah. And then I started forming real relationships and reaching out to family members. And then I started looking into the lives of the killers and meeting their loved ones. And they became really real relationships. And there was just a particular point. Well, there was a certain story that I learned about through this process that I was like, oh, this has to be a film. It can't be a book, because people need to see these individuals
yeah,
and watch their story. So that's the point at which I decided to make a film instead. I will never make another film unless I have financial backing. You can't compete, right? Like our film is really quality and it's Utah, but there was no way we would ever get into Sundance or any, like we've won awards at smaller film festivals, but it's just such a cutthroat competitive market that unless you have $1 million under your name, you just can't make inroads anywhere. But the film's out there, and it's on. You can find it on Tubi or YouTube, or even purchase it through Amazon for like $4. It's called Dog Valley. It's a true crime documentary. um, at the very end of the filming process, we were all done and we were missing a narrative element. So at the last minute, we put me in front of the camera and did a bunch of interviews with me in front of the camera. And then I become part of the film. So I become a central character in the film entirely unplanned. I'm behind the camera for years, and then suddenly I'm in front of the camera. Super proud of it. We had to whittle, 100 hours of footage down into a 90-minute film. So there's 1,000 things that are put on the cutting room floor, but yeah, really proud of it. It's we tell it tastefully, but it's not an easy story either.
yeah. No, that's incredible, Chad. Um, when when I am telling a story, well, like when I'm creating a piece of art or lyrics, I feel like sometimes there's a message that I'm trying to say through art that I wouldn't necessarily say directly. As you've been in that space and creating, Jeff's, I mean, not that you have to say something you don't want to, but is there something you've created, a message that's come out through your work that might have been harder to say directly to some? I feel like you're actually better at this than I am. Sometimes I'm a little more subtle, like, "Hey, I'm sad right now. Listen to my sad song." But, I don't know, is there anything in that space that you've been able to get out and have a bigger story maybe than what you would have done if you just said, "Hey, this is a really sad story and everybody needs to hear about it," but you were able to explore it and build it into something more powerful. Does that make sense?
I don't find a lot of value in subtlety. I mean, when it's warranted, I think the place I'm the most subtle is with my children, because, that requires, for example, they know that I had trauma in my childhood, but they don't know a detail about it because that's not a thing that they need as their, children. So, like, subtlety is important. I think, I'm careful with vulnerability. So, like, I've written about my life, but when you write a memoir, you have to be careful what you're writing because other people are going to read it, right? So there's things that are censored or held back. I'm going to share things that I feel comfortable sharing and not things that are going to leave me kind of a vulnerable mess afterward. But I'm not scared to speak truth these days. Which has been a challenge in the work that I do. For example, and I can't talk in extreme detail about this, but after Charlie Kirk was killed here in Utah, which was 20 miles from my house, I, as a queer ex Mormon, was hired for 8 straight days to do direct trauma therapy with all of the kids who witnessed the violence, which meant working largely with the far right community. And when you're in a therapeutic setting and you're there to support, and you're hearing people use hate speech to describe minority groups, I am not super great at filtering these days. I mean, you have to find the right way to do that. So the speaking of truth depends on the hat that you're wearing, right? But I don't find a lot of value in filtering these days, even with my family, right? Like, I'm pretty vocal about how I feel about things. I'm not afraid to stop calling someone who's going to be offensive. Like, I'm careful. I have a phrase I use with myself. I could tattoo about 20 mantras on my body, but one of them is my wellness cannot be currency. I can't spend, if I have a finite amount of my happiness, and your relationship with me withdraws energy from that on a regular basis, that can't be the basis. You have to refill my tank, just as I would expect to refill yours. Otherwise, I'm not super invested. So, yeah, the speaking of truth, I think, is really crucial. One of the things I'm talking about a lot as I do public presentation this year is like, how do you define community? Because if you're feeling okay, but your next door neighbor is afraid of ICE agents and deportation and like having their civil rights stripped away and their medical benefits reduced, maybe we need to look at what's actually happening around us. And I think the acknowledgement of like privilege and the speaking of truth has become more crucial than ever, in these like very divisive times. I just went all over the place with that.
I want you to just keep going. I love it, Chad. Right when I asked that question, I was like, "Oh, Dad, Chad's good at this. Like he knows how to like have those boundaries and speak truth." I think that's something that so many people struggle with. I am better at it now, but I mean that's always been a part of my personality. Like I want to please people. I want to keep people happy. I'm the middle of the road, just like how do we find peace? And I think here in North Idaho, it's been really interesting the last few years, right? Running a healthcare system in a very conservative community, and trying to be a community leader and doing all these things. I find I have to build common ground first, but and then the power of relationships. I've actually had some really deep, powerful conversations about topics that I just wouldn't. I'm not going to do my public speaking on a very controversial topic, but I'm going to have that campfire conversation with a friend and I'm going to make ground. Like we'll both sort of move a little closer to each other in that space. And I think
Yeah.
that's so powerful when you do that.
I think there's a lot of ways to take that. I mean, I've been with my partner for a long time now, but I was single for quite some time before we got together. And I got to a place in dating, for example, where I would ask someone out and ask them out a second time. And if I was really interested in them after the second date, I would say, "Hey, I had a really nice time. I'd love to see you again, but it's your turn to ask me." And they'd be like, "Oh, that sounds really intimidating that you're being so forward." And I'm like, "Well, if you find that intimidating, we're probably not going to work, right?" I'm bold, but to create kind of a fake scenario, everybody has this family member, and I will not name any names, but you go home and there's that like one skeevy uncle who's like flirting with the nieces in a way that makes them feel uncomfortable. Most the family just kind of rolls their eyes and goes, "Oh, there that," and I'm the
It's
guy that's
Uncle
like, "Knock
Bob.
it off. You're making them
Yeah, exactly.
uncomfortable." So like I'm not afraid to be if rocking the boat is helping the people who need to feel safe feel safer, then that's always worth the cost for me. As a queer man in Utah, I am always going to be talking to the person in the back of the room who needs to hear me, which pisses a lot of Mormons off.
Yeah. Well, and it's just that space. I mean, I think it's what I love that you're modeling that and that you live your life that way. I mean, I want to invite people in. It's fine that we don't agree on topic A, topic B, but at the end of the day, I'm interested in your heart. I want to have that real human connection. And there's times when it's just not going to make sense. Like we're not going to agree, and boy, you hate me, and I'm like, "Eesh, that's not going to work." Um, but just trying to find those spaces to invite people in and build relationships is great. But it comes at the cost of, and it's what you've done a really good job here of saying, look, it needs to go both ways. I mean, I can invest in a relationship where there's mutual benefit here and we're learning and growing. But if it's only pulling away and nothing's coming back, that's such a great flag for anybody out there to, as you analyze your relationships and just say, is that draining? Am I restored? How does it make sense? And I think that can be a really good filter. But I love how just confident and bold and awesome you are, Chad. It comes across it. Oh, I think it always has, but I love seeing it 15 years later. It's
Very
like
much more
extra energy.
authentically me now than when we knew each other, for
Yeah,
sure. I mean, I was still me then, but like it's a very different version. I do think the rules on that are changing though now. I think if you are a woman in America, men walk through the world just kind of occupying the space that we occupy. But if you are the woman in the room, it feels different every time. There's a different lived experience. In fact, I remember there was a study done when I was back in college where they interviewed men and women at a particular university about their greatest fears. And when they tabulated the results, and I'm oversimplifying a little bit here, men's greatest fear at university was being laughed at by other men, behaving in such a way that would, get ridicule, where women's largest fear was getting raped. And when you put these two genders in the same experience and you say, oh, everybody's getting the same education, it's not. That's not how it's working. So for queer people, disabled people, elderly people, immigrants, trans people in our country, it's a very different lived experience on a daily basis. And I think we had the luxury for many years in as Americans, I think, of saying things like, there's good people on both sides and we just have to get along in the middle. But as we're watching this really far divide, and this is where I'll speak truth directly. I hope that's all right. The
it's great.
far right is very caught up in what psychologists would call entrenched belief systems, which is kind of the Mormonism model you and I came from. It's what I've always been taught, so it's what I have to hold on to. It's truth, right? Where the far left is made up, the only shared experience between people on the far left is being part of a minority group that's discriminated against. So when the divide right now is people who are having civil rights removed on one side and people who are uncomfortable because their entrenchment's being challenged on the other, the divide has never been more clear. So the speaking of truth requires louder and more careful voices, and it's not easy for people to face that. It's a difficult time, but times are changing all around us. I've got two kids, one is queer and one is not, and they have qualitatively different childhoods in this country, one from the other. One has I've got 30 best friends and sleepovers and extracurricular activities, and I never feel unsafe. And the other feels unsafe all the time, even in a queer home. So it's a qualitatively different thing in the world around us. So speaking truth and boat rocking has never been more unpleasant.
It is. It's hard. Well, and there's a learned response, right? So I don't know if you saw, but I did. So I'm working on a big project up here to just really build out a center for women's health. My life experience with my wife and daughter. I mean, we've gone through lots of challenges in the healthcare system. It's like as a CEO of a healthcare system, I'm like, "We we need to do better. We need to do better." And so I've been working
Well,
on this for a long time.
in 2026, I think things are about to get real
I
crazy.
know, exactly. Well, and so anyway, I created an art show and I told stories about all of the women that have reached out to me through my Endo Dad project, all this stuff. So I had an art show going. I thought, cool, that like I'm a man in this space, like telling, and I've all these women in my life had been encouraging me and going, like to do this. And then to people that didn't know me, this looked like another white guy mansplaining women's health, to all the women out there. And like, I absolutely understand that lens of where they came from. What was really hard is all the people that just didn't take any time to get to know the story. It was just like, I'm that guy and I'm a piece of shit versus like, what's happening? Like, what's the story behind this? And anybody that came to the gallery and saw the images, I mean, I had people crying, I had people telling stories. I mean, there was this power that comes when we have these human connections. And, we may not have agreed on, I mean, it was controversial because like I use AI. And so I'm a white guy using AI to tell women's health stories. It was like a total Mike Baker moment, right? I just picked these hard things. But the power that came from it was these, like you said, the relationships that came from that community. They're powerful and they have changed my life. They've helped me see different things and they're helping me move to this. But there's that trauma response to trying something and just getting beat up. I mean, and I'm not at all, here I am like, oh, poor me. People yelled at me on
No,
social
no, no,
media
you're just
versus,
sharing.
like losing civil rights. But it's that glimpse into what everyone else lives through. And then, trying to find a way to say, how do we break these systems so you can just be yourself, be authentic and tell a story and invite people in versus it's so easy to just dump on people on social media. And I think that's what we see far right, far left, everything right now. Social media narratives are really easy to just do your thing. But when you actually sit down, have coffee, drink a beer, have a Coke, go to the soda shop, whatever it is, like when you sit next to another human, it's so much harder to just be that black and white person because you see the heart. And I think that's what I love about the human connections.
I so appreciate good allies. But my lived experience as a queer person is that most heterosexual men are not to be trusted because they don't take the time to listen. And for women, I think most men are not to be trusted. So it's kind of a stacked system in that way because the lived experience for people of color is that most white people aren't safe, right?
Exactly.
So earned trust and being an ally, I think, is a really positive experience for people who have privilege to learn because most situations that I enter are there's the automatic assumption, oh, Chad's a gay person, which means this. There's meaning assigned before they even hear me open my mouth. Now, for some, it means safety. For others, it means they feel threatened or disgusted. And for others, it's something else in the middle, right? But like I carry that into every interaction, and every woman, every person of color, every person who's disabled carries that same thing. So I think it's a positive experience to have that. This is a compliment I reserve for my favorite straight people, and I hope this is received in good faith. You are the gayest straight guy I know. And what I
Thank
mean
you.
by
It's an
that is
honor. I love it.
I have I have a handful of straight friends who are excellent allies. I would have you in my home with your spouse, with my queer friends, and all of my queer friends would be safe, which is not a thing I could say about most straight people, which is unfortunate. But you got to earn my trust because that's just how the world works a little bit, and that can be an unfortunate place to begin from, right? And I don't know. I think that's the very Mormon thinking too that you and I come from of like, I'm a really good person. So like
Mhm.
good things like should just be recognized. Can't you see how good I'm doing? Which is what I get from my LDS family a lot. And I have to recognize that thinking pattern in interactions that I approach with others because I want to be liked and like, it's not their job to like me.
Mhm.
Sometimes that could be a
But it's
challenge
just so
as
much better when everybody likes me. Come on. No, I think there's such energy that comes, and I appreciate the compliment, Chad. I mean, again, I think all of that comes from, we talk about our childhood. I grew up in a home, my parents just, it was the place to hang out for anybody. There was not a lot of judgment in that space. It was show up, sit on the front porch, eat cookies. We're going to have an ice cream party. Yeah, like it was the hangout space. And my parents just, I think they did a really good job just teaching us that it's all about the heart of the person in front of you. And I wish, I mean, if I could just have one wish for the world, right? I wish we could just sort of wave off the filter that everybody has and just be real with each other.
yeah.
And, so many wars and controversy and all this stuff. It goes away when you take that mask off. And I'm gonna flip back to the start. Like when you stop making yourself small and you take that, you come up, your arms wide and like, all right, bring it on, world, let's go. And just
Yeah.
meet people in that space.
Can I share a story real quickly?
Please.
So the day that I got the call for the Charlie Kirk killing, I was there as a trauma responder on a, like an emotional trauma responder. And when I first got to town, and for those of you that have been in Utah, it's kind of a weird area of the city. The university's just off the freeway. There's a Starbucks right across the street from where the shooting took place. And so when I first got to town, they had me wait at the Starbucks for a couple of hours while they were getting my station ready. And while I was sitting there, this news went up to national level very quickly, and then international level. And all of these local and international and foreign reporters started flying into town, getting off of planes, and then getting cars up to the university. And they were all waiting for the press conferences to begin and all the news to start dropping. So the Starbucks, which maybe had 12 tables in it, suddenly became a hotbed of like reporter activity. So there were 50, 60 people sitting inside, outside, typing, setting up cameras. They're on their cameras, they're recording things, they're writing things. And the rhetoric in the room very quickly in those early hours went to anti trans. The conversations about transgender terrorists and trans movements and how decent people are being misunderstood by the trans community. And then they started getting eyewitnesses to the murder coming in and interviewing on camera while they're talking about, oh, why I don't understand why trans people are attacking us and our beliefs. And it got really loud in there. Behind the counter were two gay men and a trans woman making everyone and a trans woman making everyone's coffee. And that's the mask off, the trust. I don't think those queer people behind the counter have the ability in that environment to say, hey, look at me.
Right.
But everyone in that room needed to take 30 seconds to look around and take a breath and not go with this like sensationalist rhetoric that we're so caught up on. And that's what I mean when I say I'm always going to look for the person in the back of the
Love it.
room, because the energy is just so intense against. And how can you possibly feel safe in that environment? You know, it's these are intense times, which goes back to the creation of joy. Joy is so crucial.
Absolutely. Yeah. Why I want to maybe we wrap up the conversation back on that joy piece. You know, the way you described it at the start, and I love it. It's like actively fighting to create joy because the world needs it right now. That actually takes a lot of extra energy. There's a lot of people that don't feel like they get up in the morning and I need to go make the world a better place. It's like I'm going to get up. I have my own stuff I'm dealing with, and if I make it home tonight, that's great. And cool for my podcast is called Still Here, Still Trying. Like awesome, we're still here. We're still trying. We're working at that level. But then you move up to that next level where, you find this energy, this calling. I feel like I've known you long enough. It feels like you have this calling to take a story, to take a narrative, to do something and turn it into something better. Even, I imagine like the clients that you work with and your friends and people, like you seem to invest in people and help them get better. When we're looking at like 2026 and you're having a message here on this amazing podcast, right?
With an amazing host.
What's sort of the advice to anybody going forward in 2026? You're sitting there in with Chad. You got your free therapy session, and we're talking about how to make 2026 the best year. What's a couple concepts that you can share with people for fighting for joy, and it's okay to like just make it through the end of the day too. There's that balance.
Yeah, because I have so much time in my life that was wasted. I spent 2 years knocking on doors while in the worst depression, trying to convert people to a religion I didn't believe in. I wasted a lot of time. So, in this stage of my life, I could talk on this for a long time. I sit down with myself every month or so, and I have a pretty strong goal setting session. I use a mantra, a metric of physical, spiritual, mental, emotional. So I'll kind of take a broad-based look at my life. How do I feel about my age and my body and my sleep patterns? How am I doing creatively? The spiritual side is, how do I like myself? Do I matter to the world? I take a look at my bank account and my key relationships. It's a massive goal setting session. And if you, using the weight loss analogy, if you decide to exercise and eat healthy, you can't lose all that weight by going to the gym 3 times. That's not how it works, right? So some things take a while. If you got $100,000 in debt and decide to pay it off, it's going to take a while, but it's worth the effort. And as you're making progress and changing systems and leaving broken things behind, you find who you are. I actively recommend therapy for anyone who's out there, and like body movement. But an easy place to take this, let's all go back to March 2020 when COVID hit. And my family had a huge vacation in Cancun the next month that we had to cancel. We suddenly, the kids were both homeschooling. My spouse and I were both working from home. Everything got like chaotic and sticky. And I remember at that time making the choice, like, I can either cave in or I can find ways for things to be joyful. So suddenly it was Legos and coloring pictures and planting flowers and making cookies and riding bikes. And we just changed the way we did things. And life got better as a result. So that's kind of where I'm at. The craziness that's all around us, I cannot change much, but I can change my community. I can make sure my next door neighbor feels safe. I can make sure my clients know they have a safe space. I can make sure my children and their friends are loved. I can make sure that I am living my truth. So one of my top mantras these days, and I share it on my show almost every week if you listen, my podcast is called Gray Malkin Lane, which is after the found family concept that exists in the X-Men. It's the idea of leave your home behind and go live together somewhere else, right?
Oh boy,
But
there's
my,
a lot
my my
here.
weekly mantra right now is simply the creation of joy is an act of defiance. In a world that wants me to be small, I'm going to keep creating joy, and I'm not even moving at my full speed yet. If I can break some of these last systems that don't feel right, what can I do when I'm living my truth at the capacity that I'm able to? And I think that's something we all wonder. I don't want to have my last breaths being regrets about what I didn't do. That was a
Chad,
sobering place to end.
dude, my goodness, I love, but I love it. I mean, that's what this podcast is all about. I mean, at the end of the day, look, it is okay to have a bad day. I love how strong your systems are to protect you and invest in a better tomorrow. You're making the time to actively, you have a dashboard of metrics for your life. And I mean, you're very structured and have that process. And that helps so much. I mean, my ADD land, like that is where I really struggle is having structure. But the more that I've built structure into my life, I see this extra power. I'm actually able to do a whole lot more and have more of an impact. And so I love that. I think that's great advice. Like follow that structure and do that. And then I just, at the end of this, I think the message really like the world needs more of you. The world needs more people like you. And if you're listening, you can be like this and you can make the impact in just like Chad was saying, I can't change what's happening in national politics right now. I'm not the president. I'm not the ruler of the universe, but the interaction I have with the waitress, with somebody at work, with somebody walking down the street, even just smiling at someone walking down the street, I can make their day better. And if that's all you can do today is just go through your day and smile at someone, you made the world better. That's great. That's a building block. And then the next day, maybe wave at them, like kind of find that structure because at the end of the day, our world will be so much better when we're living our lives at that full capacity that Chad's talking about. And I think that's what you see, in the space here with the podcast and like those positive influences in your life. It's probably why you listen to these types of things, right? You want to figure out how to access this energy and it's amazing. It feels so good when you're creating, when you're making a difference. When somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey, I heard a song you released and it really spoke to me." That's why I do this. It feels so good because like we're making the world better somehow. But I have days where I don't ever want to talk to another person again.
Yeah.
And I need to retreat. Like it's this emotional bandwidth that we have to do it. But I love that piece. And maybe that's where we leave it is we're all working to move our lives up an extra gear and imagine what that extra gear looks like for you, wherever you're at, whether that's first gear or fifth gear, you're making a difference. So
And I
this has
think
been
you
great.
gotta
Anything you want to wrap up with, Chad?
yeah,
We've
I
got
just would
plenty of
say
time,
you
but
gotta make sure you're diagnosing the problem correctly, right? In Utah, I have to give this message a lot. If you have a broken leg, you can't just pray your way through it. You gotta go see a doctor. So if you've got trauma, you gotta see a therapist. I can't just work harder and make my queerness go away. You know what I mean? So you gotta let yourself be complicated and messy and put the work in to be an ethical human moving forward. And then, these days the creation of safety is such a big deal. And here's my last thought, unless you want to ask me something else.
all
There's
good.
a
Yeah.
difference between hanging a Trump flag and a pride flag in 2026. One is, look at me, try this in a small town. People that believe by like me are the only people welcome here, and everybody else better watch out. Where hanging a pride flag almost makes you a target. You expect people to stare, you worry that they're going to take it, burn it down, harm you, but it also tells people who are like you that you are safe. So the creation of safety for people who are disenfranchised right now is such an enormous thing, especially for immigrants who are really struggling at this day and age. So, Mike, thank you for the joy that you are spreading into the world, and thanks for the amplification. It's such a joy to be here with you today. Thanks for the time.
Oh, you're welcome, Chad. This has been so much fun. I think, the message from Mr. Rogers is probably very appropriate here. Like when times get challenging, look for those safe people, right? And I think that's a great way to wrap up the message in there. Is just like look for those safe people and then be those safe people. And I think that's how we can get better. Chad, how do people find out about you? So if they are interested in therapy in Utah or any of your other things, I mean, we'll put links
Yeah.
in the show notes. But how do people find you?
Yeah, so I keep my own social media presence pretty small because I have family, but you could follow my show at graymalkin_lane on Instagram. I'm very active there. You can also, my website is the name of my business. So it's Healthy Conflict Counseling, just .com. And you can find links to some of my works there. We just put a page up about my forthcoming graphic novel. So I kind of exist in odd spaces. I need like a publicist or something at some point. But those are the easiest ways to reach me at this point, I think.
I love it, Chad. So one thing I've had to learn is I actually registered the domain mikebakerhq.com. Now that has a little sense of narcissism in it, but if you know me, it makes so much sense. Like it's just
You're
this
you are the
capsule
product.
for
You are the
everything
product
to
that you're
live in.
selling, my friend.
I love it. Well, Chad, thank you so much. I can't wait to see all the great things you do this year. Let's make sure it's not 15 years again before we talk. And next time I'm down there, we'll chat. And if you ever make it up here, let's make
I
sure
would
we connect.
love
So
to get a cup of coffee. That sounds
sounds great.
amazing.
All
Thanks,
right,
everybody.
Chad.
Take care of yourselves.
Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.
The headlines fade, the noise dies down, but your heartbeat shakes the ground. Through every fear, through every crowd, love is still loud. Love is still loud. They can build their walls, they can raise their guns, but they can't unwrite the song we've sung. Whispers grow into a choir, hope thrones. Love is the power we build on our own. Echoes of mercy shaking the ground. Even in whispers, love is still loud. Love is still loud, breaking through the static, stronger than the fear. It's automatic. Every voice, every soul, every vow. The world may be broken, but love is still loud. Love is still loud. The headlines fade, the noise dies down, but your heartbeat shakes the ground. Through every fear, through